In the heart of the devastated northern enclave, where winter's first chill seeps into tents that have long lost their rigour, hundreds of Palestinians are applying to leave. The reason, they say, is simple. They cannot survive the conditions. One resident puts it plainly: the amount of Palestinians that actually apply to leave is massive. We're talking about more than 10,000 Palestinians who filled their applications ready to leave. The applicant count, if correct, signals a mass exodus initiative unlike any seen in the current crisis. The group coordinating the applications is reportedly operating from the area of Deir al-Balah in central Gaza. From there, they assist people in filling exit applications, paying passage fees of around $1,500 per person and arranging onward flights. What is making those Palestinians apply is the deteriorating situation where Palestinians have been deprived from their basic life necessities. It's the first winter now, the third year, and the situation is catastrophic, where most of the tents have been completely drowned. We're talking about Palestinians without any shelter. Behind these words lie scenes of ruin, tents collapsed under successive rains, families huddled in ruins of buildings, children with nowhere to play, elderly with no heat. Winter has brought a new threat: exposure. A refugee camp that was merely inadequate before now teeters on the edge of uninhabitability. Officials inside Gaza say the organisation in Deir al-Balah is operating in semi-clandestine fashion. While they are not formally registered with international agencies, they have become the de facto facilitator for departure applications among those who can afford the cost or have contacts abroad. Their role remains largely unreported until now. According to survivors of the operation, 2 charter flights have already left Gaza via the Ramon airport corridor, one carrying 150 passengers. A second, the same number, putting the total at about 300 people so far. But what we need to know is these Palestinians were coordinated to leave. So they crossed the yellow line, they went all the way to Karim Abu Salam, they went to Ramon airport. The phrase yellow line appears in Gaza parlance to refer to the buffer zone near the Israeli-occupied perimeter. The route leads from central Gaza to the southern exit point at the Israeli airport via the Kerem Shalom Kamash crossing region before onward flight. According to some sources, the flights landed in a third country unspecified by the passengers at the time of departure. Now, what we also need to know is the fact that Palestinians did not know where they were going, so they went paid money for an unknown destination, but the deteriorating life situation in the Gaza Strip is what pushed them to do that. Among those who left, several say they were told only at the last moment of their destination. Some found themselves airborne toward South Africa, others toward lesser-known transit hubs. South African immigration authorities say more than 150 Palestinians arrived there without proper stamps or documentation. Inside central Gaza, the mood is grim. Families calculate the cost of survival, remaining risks death from bombardment, disease or winter exposure, leaving costs thousands of dollars, and includes uncertainty, dislocation and separation. The organisation in Deir al-Balah is said to have negotiated with intermediaries, set up payout systems and processed applications, though no public ledger exists. The Humanitarian coalition monitoring Gaza calls such departures a last resort for those with means. The majority of the enclave's 2 million-plus residents remain too impoverished to pay private exit fees. Many feel forced to stay despite being trapped in ruins with no utilities, limited water and near-complete power blackout. Winter compounds the crisis. One aid official states, for the first time in the third year of war, the tents are completely drowned in rainwater and mud. Some camps are submerged, others are abandoned because children developed pneumonia. The organisation in Deir al-Balah now reports field staff feeding applications into a digital system, liaising with exits and flight manifests. The 2 charter flights are described as documented by one of the girls that made it out of the Gaza Strip in the first plane. She says, "We had to walk through debris across the yellow line, Then we boarded a bus to Ramon. Then we boarded the plane. I didn't know where we were going until we were in the air. Her testimony matches reports from South African authorities. Passengers aboard the flight that landed at Johannesburg's OR Tambo International Airport lacked exit stamps and had no fixed stay plan in the country. The Palestinian embassy in South Africa says the group was not formally vetted or aided by official Palestinian institutions. The flight's organisation raises multiple unanswered questions. Who exactly organised the route? Which third country destination was confirmed? Were the passengers informed of their stay rights in that country or potential onward travel? Were Israeli and Egyptian authorities aware, and by what legal process were the Palestinians permitted to exit Gaza? Israeli defence officials, when asked about mass departures from Gaza, insist that no forced evacuation is underway and that any exit must go through official coordination. In the Johannesburg case, the Israeli military official named al-Majd as the facilitator. The organisation in Darabala claims it only coordinates applications for those who request it. That is, the departures are voluntary, driven by desperation. But the sheer scale of more than 10,000 applications, if accurate, signals a deeper dynamic, either increasing willingness to leave or the existence of a major exit scheme. In interviews, organisers say they began tracking applications 6 months ago when camp conditions worsened sharply. One Darabala staffer says, "We were getting dozens of forms daily, now it's hundreds. People say if we don't go now, we may not survive the winter." Another added, "We've never seen weddings or life like in Gaza before. Everything is about survival at night. The tents collapse, the children shiver, the hunger sort of lingers." According to the staffer, the applicant fee of $1,500 per passenger covers transport to the exit point, processing a flight, and arrival logistics in the destination country. Most applicants pay in cash or via trusted money brokers with links across Gaza and abroad. Few options for credit exist. The organisation in Darabala says they cannot cover those fees. It is strictly a coordination body, not a funding body. We don't have the resources to pay for people. We help them fill out forms, negotiate, find seats on the plane, liaise with the transit group. Several passengers described chaotic exits. "We boarded a bus at 3 a.m, drove through darkness, checkpoints, then to a plane. There were families, children, pregnant women. I saw no aid workers. I asked where. We were going. They said, 'You'll know when you land.'" The South African arrival highlights that passengers may end up in countries that are not typical refugee destinations and where their legal status is unclear. South African authorities say about 130 of the arrivals from Gaza were eventually allowed to stay on humanitarian grounds after NGO intervention. Human rights observers say exit schemes like this raise red flags. Are vulnerable people subject to exploitation? Are the fees exorbitant? Is the lack of documentation putting people at risk of detention or deportation? The Johannesburg incident triggered calls for investigation. Inside Gaza, the organisation insists it is transparent to applicants about the risks, yet few can verify the full chain of custody once they exit. A former applicant said, "We trusted them because they were based in Darabala, people we knew, but once you are on the bus, you're in someone else's hands." The wider humanitarian context is indispensable to understanding this exodus. The Gaza Strip has suffered months of blockade, full-on military operations, and large-scale destruction of housing. Aid agencies warn of famine conditions. One senior UN official described the north of Gaza as already beyond catastrophe. Compounded by winter rain and widespread infrastructure collapse, thousands of internally displaced families are now in open-air ruins, not tents. Many have been uprooted multiple times. In this environment, paying to leave becomes not a luxury, but a survival calculation. Local analysts warn of the unintended consequences. If tens of thousands leave, the demographic and political dynamics of Gaza could shift. Critics call such large-scale departures forced by circumstance rather than true voluntary migration. Israeli officials deny any intention to depopulate Gaza, but acknowledge management of exit permits case by case. Back in central Gaza, the organization in Darabala has set up an internal exit desk in a former warehouse staffed by volunteer case workers, mostly young Palestinians. Their role: collect applicant data, verify identity, liaise with transit partners, confirm payments, schedule bus pickups, monitor flight manifests, and inform families of arrival points abroad. Several say they use cell phones despite intermittent power and a lack of internet connectivity. One volunteer reflects, it's not just about getting someone out, it's about convincing them to leave. Many Palestinian families told us, if we stay, the bombs will come. If we leave, we may lose our home. But if we stay, we lose everything anyway. When asked about the destinations, the organisation declined to name the countries, citing confidentiality and protection of passengers. They confirm flights went via Ramon Airport in southern Israel after crossing the Yellow Line. They say some passengers were placed on onward flights to Europe or Africa, while others remain in temporary transit. So far, the 300 confirmed departures represent phase one of the scheme, the organisation says. The next phase has reportedly thousands of applications queued. We are preparing for more flights in December, the coordinator told our reporter, subject to permissions, funding and transit availability. But there are significant risks. Many departing Palestinians do not have documented rights of stay in the destination country. If rejected, they may become stranded, cut off from aid and legal protection, or face detention. The Johannesburg arrival of largely undocumented Palestinians illustrates the hazard. Back in Gaza, the community impact is already felt. Families who left report paying off loans, selling possessions, or taking borrowed money. Some say they left other family members behind, parents, children, because only those with means can afford the cost. The organisation acknowledges this divide. This exit window is open only to the relatively able. Many will be left behind. Humanitarian observers caution that mass self-evacuation could further collapse Gaza's already fragile social fabric. Aid programmes rely on local coordination. Schools, clinics, when populations disperse, the assistance networks weaken. On the other hand, if people stay and die, the humanitarian toll is greater. During a site visit to a refugee camp tent in the central Gaza region, this correspondent saw children coughing in the cold, mothers mixing diluted soup for families of 8, tents sealed with plastic sheets failing to keep out the damp. Volunteers helping with exit applications say, when these kids ask us, when can we sleep indoors? When can we turn on the stove? When will this end? That is the question that triggers many to say, we must leave now. One key line from the applicant pool frames it succinctly. The deteriorating life situation and circumstances in the Gaza Strip is what pushed them to do that. The speaker, a liaison for the organisation, emphasised that despite the cost and uncertainty, many viewed departure as the only viable option. In terms of oversight, no international agency has yet validated the full structure of the Darabala-based operation. The organisation says it liaises with lawyers, transit brokers and third-country carriers, but documentation is limited. Some human rights groups are calling for investigations into whether fees are fair, whether protections are in place for vulnerable passengers, and whether the exits comply with international evacuation protocols. Meanwhile, for those left behind, the fear remains acute. They watch neighbours departing, doubt whether they themselves can raise the funds, and wait for winter to worsen. One mother of 4 said, "My sons and I, we survive by charity kitchens. The bread is sometimes cold. The water is muddy. My husband died last year. Now I choose stay and freeze or pay and trust the pros." Unknown. I choose the unknown. On the ground in central Gaza, the volunteers at Darabala speak of growing queues, more drab tents, fewer aid deliveries, and increasing calls for exit. "We never thought we'd be doing this in Gaza," one coordinator said, exporting people out. But the war changed everything. International aid officials say that unless Gaza's humanitarian corridors are opened, unless meaningful reconstruction begins, and unless people have reason to stay, more departures will follow. The latest data from relief agencies indicates that massive displacement within Gaza has already taken place, and the risk of internal collapse is severe. The departure of 300 so far may be only the beginning. In the past week, in response to the Johannesburg incident, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa confirmed that intelligence services had opened an investigation into the charter flight arrangements. If more such flights are taking place from Gaza, it may prompt diplomatic questions about exit routes, legal status of passengers, and sovereignty issues. For many in central Gaza, the departure process carries a bittersweet mixture of hope and guilt. Leaving means survival and opportunity, but leaving also means losing home, perhaps family, perhaps the unknown of exile. We have nowhere to go, one applicant said, but we have nowhere to stay. As winter deepens, as aid deliveries stall, and as bombs still fall, the quiet exodus of Palestinians from Gaza may represent one of the largest migration movements in the enclave's modern history. Whether it is truly voluntary or simply the last resort of the besieged remains to be seen. But the human calculus is clear. Stay and perhaps die. Pay and leave into the unknown.